Hello everybody, it's your boy, Finn. Yes, I did record this the same day as episode 25. Cry about it. Today we are going to be reading chapters 46 and 47 of Spill Your Guts. This is going to take a while. Alright, let's just get into this shit. Actually, I need to put on lip gloss. I keep forgetting to do that, like every fucking time. I only think about it like after I've started. Take a sip of my soda. Let's do this, bitches. Chapter 46, Double-Edged Sword. NSFW mentions plus suicide mentions. The walk home was absolutely hellish. Hours in the dark, holding Toby by the forearm, too full of self-hate to let yourself hold his gloved hand. He led you home, trying to talk, apologize, say that he could have sworn that they were dead. Communication, work things out. That's what people in relationships do. That's what adults are supposed to do. It just reminded you over and over how disgusting you were. How much you thought you could act like a normal couple when you were far from it. You allowed yourself to sink so deeply into love, into half-hearted acceptance of your situation until you could find some miracle solution. There was no regret for developing feelings and acting on them. You loved it. You wanted it. You needed it. Yet you didn't deserve it. You had to keep telling him to just leave you be, quietly shake your head and avert your eyes from his worried expression. You could talk after you sorted your shit out, that shit being the newfound thrill of the hunt. You had to zero in on the problem. Hopefully find some way to never feel that way again. If you started to really enjoy it the way they did, escape would be further from your grasp. So you had to cut your flow of love and support off. They would accept you, understand you, encourage you to feel that way. You excused them, the men you loved, of their crimes, and only focused on yourself, somehow creating a mental loophole that told you you were the worst. They'd felt the rush for years, enjoyed it. Toby seemed to crave it at times. A terrifying thought crossed your mind. If you accepted the rush and gave in, you could become a proxy without having to be completely broken, torn from love. You could live out the rest of your days begrudgingly under him, but at least you'd enjoy your job, get to be with your boys forever. You could just give up. It'd be so much easier than fighting the strong current life had thrown at you. No. No, no. You'd gotten this fucking far. Backing down now is a pussy-ass bitch move. Fuck the rush. You could beat it, never feel it again. It'd just strengthen your resolve. You'd learn from this, and grow. You weren't going to give in no matter how much they urged you to. It's just another hurdle to jump, after almost every other hurdle you'd tripped and tumbled over. The sun had risen a few hours ago, yet it was still quite dim. Dark gray clouds tinted a slight purple hue heavy above the trees, blocking out most of the light and threatening the two of you with an incoming storm. The second the cabin came into view in the soft morning light, you booked it, letting go of Toby and not caring that he was running after you. It wasn't him chasing you down for the fun of it. It was him trying to get you to talk to him. The lunatic, slathered in blood, trying to talk to you. Another lunatic slathered in slightly less blood. You burst into the house, mask in one hand and gun in the other. Wait. Toby pushed open the closing door, entering into the kitchen behind you. Brian's head snapped over to the both of you, filling the coffee machine with water. Tim was nowhere to be seen, probably still in bed since there was no coffee ready for him yet. As you stormed past Brian, Toby hot on your heels, you could see the gears turning in his head. Your stony face, Toby's desperation, bloody handprints on your titties. So I was standing there, barbecue sauce on my titties. Something was up and he knew it. Damn intuitive bastard. A hand just barely brushed your shoulder before it stopped. He knew better than to try and stop you. You continued your march out of the kitchen while looking over your shoulder. Brian had grabbed Toby's hand, the boy looking like a kicked puppy, and Brian didn't seem to know what the fuck was going on. But he had an inkling that you needed some time to think. Brian, Toby whined as you continued your crusade into the living room, turning into the hall. You weren't particularly sweaty, or that smelly. You just felt absolutely filthy. The target's wide eyes and disgusted gaze lingering in your mind's eye. You couldn't imagine what they were thinking. A friend, family member, or lover, horribly chopped up beside them, legs half gone, and the one responsible for it dry humping into someone they could only assume was the killer of the person who they'd probably heard screaming for you to stop. It was vomit-inducing to think about being in their shoes. You couldn't imagine seeing that thing getting a hatchet to the dome. Toby had told you that he got them right between the eyes. Like that made it any better. He was just trying to make you feel better the only way he understood how. He didn't mean to further upset you. He was trying incredibly hard, and it weakened your resolve. You were so close to caving, telling him it wasn't his fault, that you loved him, that you weren't angry with him. You just hated yourself so much that you didn't think that you deserved him or the others. Being the stubborn McFuck that you were, you held firm. You didn't tell him shit, didn't wrap your arms around him and cry. Distance was what you needed until you could be absolutely sure that the rush wouldn't take hold of you once more. You would not enjoy killing. If it wasn't there anymore, then you could tell them about it. Tell them that you beat it. Maybe they'd be inspired to try and beat it too, but that was wishful thinking, and you were getting ahead of yourself. The only situation you'd felt that way again was if you were in a scenario that you'd be chasing down and killing another person. An unsavory situation where rational thought was incredibly easy to throw out the window. You'd have to go through the scenario at least multiple times and not feel a single hint of the sickeningly giddy sense of victory. It was a tall order and a lot of time distancing yourself from the boys. Could you even do that? You were somebody that needed love, needed to vent out your problems. You knew you wouldn't be able to hold it in long, but on the other hand, you felt the great desire to hide it. If they knew, they tried to cultivate that feeling, get you to give in to the dreary thought of submitting to him. You were stuck between a rock and a hard place. The water was getting colder and colder, your fingertips getting pruned. You didn't know how long you'd been under the stream of water, but it didn't help. Your flesh itself was free of any bits of dried blood that seeped through your clothes, but you still felt dirty. It was like an itch you couldn't seem to scratch, an unseen layer of grime over your skin that didn't go away no matter how hard you rubbed away at yourself. Skin-colored skin growing raw and irritated, especially the deep purple and red bruises around both of your titties, angrily throbbing at their abuse that had occurred only a few hours before. Looking at them made you feel sick. You wanted to scrub at them until they went away, tears pricking at your eyes at the pain. You didn't want to leave, but you did at the same time. The kitchen was empty now besides you. The boys had sat themselves in Tim's room. It was nice of Brian to give you space and have time for him, Tim, and Toby to talk about the mission, but that could lead to them asking questions. Though if Toby was as shameless as he was last night, they could be led to the conclusion that you were just pissed about dry humping in front of a dead body and a legless target. The thing about Tim and Brian, though, is that they understood some of the nuances of your plight. It wouldn't take them long to put two and two together that it wasn't just that. You were a very touching, clingy person. The sudden long-term distance would be suspicious. That's why you had a bit of a plan. Take as many walks as possible. Avoid them all the time until the rush went away. Sleep on the couch, eat meals outside, preoccupy yourself with walking Goober. Though you weren't going to take him out right now, even though you opened the front door, you could hear it. The heavy rain on the roof. Even before you opened the front door, you could hear it. The heavy rain on the roof. The dull roar of distant thunder. Going outside was a bad idea. But you didn't care. The open door only made the whoosh of the rain slamming into the dirt even louder. The wind almost pulling the door out of your hands. You'd be instantly soaked to the bone. Your clothes weren't waterproof and they didn't cover much either. A sweater with a little clown on it wouldn't protect you from the rain. Maybe the rain could help. Maybe cover up your tracks so they couldn't follow you. You could probably find shelter under a tree or something. This would be fine. This was not fine. Even though you sat under a tree, its thick branches and leaves didn't block out all the rain. Though it wasn't slapping itself onto your entire body, it was still dripping onto your head. You were still freezing as the breeze sat in the mud, back to the tree, hugging your knees to your chest. Part of you told you to head back. Your iron will could handle some questioning, right? There was doubt there. You'd cave to familiar and warm touch, tell them everything and let them hold you and comfort you, make you feel like a good person, like you weren't disgusting and despicable and worthy of love. You were doing your best to not think about how you were shivering, teeth chattering and bouncing your feet for a spark of warm friction that just wouldn't spark. You pulled your head from your knees, trying to get a glance at the sky to see if the storm would be letting up anytime soon. What clouds you could see told you that the storm wasn't going to be letting up in the slightest for a long time. Dark gray and ready to pour onto the earth for hours. This sucks. You brought your gaze from the sky into the expanding forest ahead with a sigh. You let your eyes lazily look at the wood, tall trees, long and gangly, fat droplets somewhat distorting your view, making it hard to completely focus, blinking rapidly as water dribbled into your eyes. You didn't think there were any birch trees out here. Wait, weren't birch trees supposed to be completely white with black markings, not black leading up to one area of white? Oops. Though you may not have been the biggest expert in the world, you didn't think any trees looked like that. There was only one thing you'd ever seen that looked like that. Further looking at the thing, focusing as much as you could on its form, squinting and glaring through the rain, the white oval that was its distant head, the long strands of black leading to spindly white hands. It was him. What? You snarled, voice a cracking yell that was partially muted by a roll of thunder. What the fuck do you want, huh? You pushed yourself up from the mud, it coldly sticking to your ass. Thank you for that. I needed to know that. Nothing like standing up to an eldritch entity while looking like you shit your pants. You didn't know anything. It wasn't in your head when you know it could be if it wanted to be. It just wanted to taunt you. Why is it showing itself? Did he know about the rush that you enjoyed? Did he know about the rush that you enjoyed killing someone? Or about the spark of the idea in your head to give up? Sink into his grasp. YN? Tim? YN? Brian? You didn't look in the direction of their voices. Your eyes were glued to the thing that ruined your life. Their lives. The thing you hated the most. It was indirectly letting you know that it told your boys where you were, that it led them to you, that you could hide from him, and that he wanted the men that you loved, that you couldn't hide from him, and that the men you loved are tied to him. You couldn't tell if this was to tear your bonds apart by putting your stubborn yet conflicted mind under the influence of their words, or to have you grow closer to them in order to give up your delusions of freedom. They were coming to console you, talk to you, communicate like proper adults, make it better even if they didn't know exactly what was wrong. It let them know where you were so they could do that. Why? To make it easier for you to give in? It didn't have to force you away from love. It could drown you in it, use your strength against you. It was a driving force for you, but it could use that. Have them find out about the rush, have them console you and tell you it's okay to feel that way. The words of people you loved and relied on could break down your resolve. It was hoping that you'd give into affection like you always did. Give into it. It didn't have to be sadistic. It could grant you the mercy of joining if you just gave up now. Somewhat smooth things over between you two. It allowing you to live, laugh, love, and you giving your life to it. Give up your struggle. Stop putting ideas into the boys' heads of escape. You could both get what you wanted. He was in business attire after all. A compromise that favored his side shouldn't be a surprise. Fuck off! You raggedly screamed into the cold air, wind cutting a chill through your soaked clothes. It was mostly directed at him, standing silent and watching, coyly reminding you that it was the puppet master. You were just a meat puppet with no will to cut the strings that bound you to its long fingers. It knew you had no will to cut yourself off from your boys, and you knew it too. There had to be a loophole. You knew you couldn't keep it up forever. Maybe lean into their love, but deny their encouragements? Ignore it and act like it didn't happen? There was no tilt of its head, no teleporting to you, no buzzing control over your body. It let you be. It was just there to let you know what it knew, let you know that it was changing up its tactics. It was going to make you give in, and time was running out. The scream you let rip into the air was muted somewhat by the pouring rain, but not enough for the boys. They already knew where you were, but your screaming only egged them on to move faster. Your words were somewhat directed at them, but you knew it was half-hearted. You wanted to be alone to think, but you wanted people too. Yet affection was like a sweet poison. It tastes so good, but hurts so bad. YN! Tim called out once more, sloshing footfalls growing louder. What the fuck are you doing out here? Sure, you went on long walks often, getting yourself lost or fucked up. However, this time, you didn't even bust your leg or eat a man. You just yelled at an entity that could completely fuck you up. "Hey, idiot!" he called out once more as you continued to stare at the thing in the distance. It had no eyes, but you had a feeling it was staring back. Boot falls in mud, coming closer and closer, huffing and puffing, like they'd ran as fast as they could to get to you before something bad happened. What they didn't know is that something bad had already happened. Not what Toby had likely told them about. It was the rush of killing. Them coming closer to console you was a continuation of the bad shit, falling into the tall fucker's plans, coming to bog down your will to fight. You'd had to look at them as their footfalls slowed to a jog, then slid to a stop. The watery mud at your feet sloshing over your already drenched sneakers as they now stood beside you. Brian didn't sound apathetic. He wasn't angry at you. He sounded concerned. As the doctor of the house and as the mother hen that he was. "Come on, let's get you back home." You didn't look to him. You just kept your hateful gaze on the thing in the distance. It was gone. With their presence, it disappeared. Image not simply blocked out by the sheets of rainwater that fell from above, but it completely disappeared. That didn't mean that it was completely gone. Those who came to carry out its will were here in its place. You preferred them over it, but at the end of the day, they were still like extensions of itself, unattached limbs carrying out its work. You wouldn't go, submit to what it wanted, ignoring the fact that this was what they wanted, wanting you to be safe inside, warm and dry, not catching a terrible cold. No. What do you mean, no? You looked away from the forest. There was nothing to stare at besides trees. Tim was soaked just like you were, dark hair sticking to his forehead, mild irritation mixed with concern. His hand held out to you, the hand of someone who was so adverse to physical touch, offering it up to you and taking a step out of his comfort zone because he was so worried for you, knowing that you thrived on touch, knowing if he offered it, you'd take the chance to hold his hand and let him lead you home. "I mean that I'm staying out here." You crushed your arms over your chest tightly, hugging yourself for some body heat. "I want to be alone for a bit." "You can be alone in my room. Come on." Brian wasn't looking much better than Tim, water darkening his clothes, sticking to his body. He also held out a hand for you to take. His hand, to comfort, but his hand was also the one of someone influenced by the twig. No. You slid a foot back through the mud, looking to increase the distance between them and you. This was a lose-lose situation for you. Distance yourself and be more susceptible to the operator's bullshit. It'd take it as you telling it to further mentally rock your shit. Or go home, talk about it, be supported into submitting. There were no good options. You were looking for a third route, telling yourself that maybe you could be strong against their words. You always had been. It was your best shot, yet you were hesitant all the same to take it. "Leave me be. Go home. I'll be back in a while." Going home sounded nice. The cold seeped into your bones. You wouldn't be swayed by their clear concern, outreaching hands. You had to stay strong. "I'm fine. Don't worry." You needed time to brace yourself. "Oh, bullshit," Tim scoffed. Though he didn't take a step forward, respecting that you wanted to keep some distance, but he didn't take a step back either. An odd limbo of sorts, respecting the distance you wanted, but not completely giving in to you. Nobody who runs blindly into the fucking woods in the middle of a storm after walking for hours right after. He was jabbering on, but skipped the specifics of what Toby and you did. That, and is okay. Embarrassment was one of the first things you felt at the disgust that rolled off his tongue. Even he knew it was nasty as fuck. He was using it to coerce you to come home to get over that embarrassment. He was using it to coerce you to come home to get over that embarrassment, though. "Come home." "I'm staying out here," you insisted. You felt like crying. Pushing them away hurt when they looked like kicked puppies. You wondered if Toby stayed at home, trying to smoke and cry away his troubles. You felt a pang of empathy for the boy, feeling like an ass to leave him out to dry. Pushing the lot of them away was too hard, even for you. Then we'll all stay out here," Brian chimed in softly with a suggestion of solidarity. Love. You couldn't take it. "We're not going anywhere." A sweet smile, even with the brow furrowed in worry. "If you're not going anywhere, then..." You spun on your heels, mud attempting to suck you into the ground and root you in place. "I'm going somewhere else." "Ryan, please." Ryan, please." Tim dropped the annoyance, exasperation, and let himself be vulnerable, his voice cracking, showing you how desperate he was to talk to you, to smooth things over, make you feel better. They could chase you down if they wanted to. They were faster than you for sure. The twig could just let them know where you were. They didn't want to force you to talk. They wanted this to happen on equal grounds. They'd come to open up the idea of talking things over and to also get your dumb ass out of the rain. We can stay out here if you want, but just talk to us. Tim was trying to compromise like a good leader should. There were no secrets between the lot of you. Unknown information that hadn't come up yet for sure, but secrets weren't a thing. You had a secret that was burning through your thick resolve with heated intensity. You had to look away, lean against the tree for support instead of one of them. The concern, worry, and care in their eyes just made you feel terrible. Not talking to them, trying to push them away, looking at them crumbled your will. It was the perfect weapon for him to use against you. In your silent agreement to stay, the boys came closer. You tensed, thinking they were going to lean on you and force affection onto you. Instead, one of them came to either... Oh my god, Toby, no. Ugh. Sorry. One of them came to either of your sides, leaning against the tree in an act of solidarity. Do you want to talk about it? Brian inquired after he leaned into the tree as he looked down at you carefully. He usually would wait, let the moment settle in, but it was pouring rain. He had to be freezing. Wanting to comfort you, but wanting to convince you to willingly come inside. You didn't respond, feeling bad about your uninstantaneous reply, needing to think. In comfortable company, in an uncomfortable setting, with the bad things you've done hanging over your head. It gave you a moment of clarity similar to the one you had staring into the legless target's eyes as Toby blew his load in his pants. Thank you for reminding me. Even though it wasn't you who did so. Talk about post-nut clarity. What if you fought fire with fire? He was trying to use them as a magnet to draw you in. The idea of a life with them could reel you in sooner or later, but you didn't want this life with them. You wanted to be free. They'd seen and experienced what life was like with you under the guise of being forced to live and go on missions together under the Twink's rule. They'd experienced some domestic bliss with you, but they hadn't experienced genuine normalcy in a long time. You were the most up-to-date on the whole being normal thing. You know that they wanted it. What if you reeled them in with tastes of sweet normalcy that they hadn't gotten a lick of in years? What if instead of them reeling you towards entrapment, you reeled them in towards freedom? There was no solid idea on how to do that just yet, but you'd figure it out. You always did. It'd be give and take. You'd have to tell them, communicate, keep building up your bonds. At the cost of the possibility, the chance that you'd take the easy way out. Your will was strong, though. Strong enough to stand up one whole time to the Twink. You could do this. Talk and get them out. Beating around the bush was a task that only increased your time outside. You could head back now if you just said the word, but the discomfort, the cold water slapping down in your head and sticking to your hair, to your forehead, brought you a sense of clarity, the lack of commas. You always seem to need to suffer in some sort of way to develop as a person. I told a target to shut the fuck up, called them a pussy, and then drowned them. The words sounded ridiculous, but admitting the crude words you willingly screeched at the terrified person was a difficult task. Saying it out loud felt like really owning up to and accepting what you did. You did a bad thing, and now other people knew about it. You weren't done. It was, you didn't know how to continue, the words catching in your throat. Carry out the message that could make or break your escape, depending on how they took it and how well your will could hold up. Not bad? Tim piped up after you let your uncertainty hang in the air for a few seconds. You looked from the thicket into him. You expected him to be happy about it, pat you on the back, have a laugh about it. Instead, he looked at you with wide eyes and a frown. He wanted you to give up and give in to the Twigs' bullshit, but he didn't seem too happy about you becoming more and more like them, even if it's what you believe that he felt had to be done. Yeah, he dryly responded. It was better than just not bad, you know? You felt sick admitting it. The enjoyable high, the thrill. You never thought you'd fall this far. You felt the need to clarify, distance yourself from them, stand on your crumbling moral high ground. Feeling went away pretty quick. It just kind of happened. You rub your cold hands on your arms, sweater fabric hanging heavy on your skin. Now, though, it's really fucking bad. You didn't mean the rush. It left your body long ago. You didn't mean the rush. It had left your body long ago. It was the feeling of self-hate that it left in its wake. It's going to be like that for a long time, Tim droned, informing you with what sounded like a heavy heart, hurting for you. He could probably relate. Yet you still asked very eloquently, "What?" The aftermath, he clarified. So they had a name for it. Only reasonable after feeling that high for so long. Did they feel the crashing low too? It never goes away, but it gets easier to deal with it the more it happens, you know? It was a stupid question to ask, yet you opened your mouth to ask it anyway. Does the rush ever go away? Feeling down in the dumps about life and yourself was par for the course when it came to murder. With every body added to your count, it got a little easier to deal with, but there was this newfound high that came with killing. Can you, ever not feel it? He blinked at your label for it. You could see the gears turning in his head. You knew they enjoyed killing. You heard the sick enjoyment in their voices at the cabin. You shivered thinking about how they used to talk about killing you. Brian answered for him. Very rarely, but for the most part, no. You glanced his way, arms crossed and trying to gather as much body heat as he could. You considered the boys strong-willed. You'd have to be to make it this far, yet not strong-willed enough. It was insensitive of you considering all the shit they went through, but you couldn't be the most considerate person in your position. If they couldn't fight the rush, could you? You didn't care to doubt yourself. It only bogged you down. Being down in the dumps wouldn't help, though. Sometimes you couldn't help it. You were fully aware of the fact that they were strong, but were bent to the twig's whims. You told yourself your circumstances were different. You were different people, but there was still the fact that they dealt with some twisted shit. They'd tried to fight and they lost to the twig, and then to the thrill of killing. That fact was obvious. This was likely a hurdle you could not jump. You'd ignore the facts like an anti-vax Facebook mom. That didn't stop the pit of dread weighing heavy in your gut. Does get better, though, Tim continued. You looked to him in hopes that his words would take his weight away from your gut. The more you kill, the more unbelievable it gets to realistically look at all the shit you've done. What? You urged, disbelief evident. That didn't help at all. In fact, it made the weight worse. One day, you wouldn't remember how many lives you ruined, how many people you hurt. You'll get to a point where you can't wrap your head around it. Lose count of all the people you kill, you know? You didn't. You still remembered all the names of those you'd killed. Isaac, Jimmy, Doug, Sully, Chris. The unknown camper and the failed final girl were an exception, but you could see their face in your mind's eye perfectly. You didn't think about it as much when you lose track. You don't think about it as much when you lose track. Let go of the need to count. That was true. Counting was for knowing for sure all the sins you've done. You could stop and live in ignorance. It might lift a weight off your shoulders, but in turn, another weight would replace it, not knowing how many you'd killed. It must be tough to not know, but knowing also sucked a massive amount of dick. It was pessimistic and sad, still somewhat self-righteous. You do your best to keep up with the count for you, to honor those you'd killed, not forget them and what killing them did to you, how their blood made you grow as a person. Or, Brian suggested, you looked to him hopefully, wishing he could bring you words of encouragement and not burn you the fuck out. You go completely numb to killing. The act of doing it is nice. Your stomach flipped as you looked at him calmly talking about enjoying slaughter like it was a Wednesday brunch. But after, you don't really care. You looked at him, flabbergasted. You were pretty sure you were completely incapable of that. You'd gone numb to it somewhat, but there were still moments of guilt that came after the act. Their corpses haunted you in your dreams. Going completely numb to it was something that you were incapable of. You didn't exactly know how to respond to that either. Both options they offered up fucking sucked. Plus, they were assuming you had the same thought process and brain chemistry as they did, that your brain could jump through the same mental hoops. Brian seemed to pick up your confusion. He went back on his statement. Maybe you can't go numb like me and Toby can. You assumed Toby was pretty unaffected by killing since he looked forward so much to missions. You don't strike me as somebody with incredibly low empathy. Brian, I've killed people. Yeah, and you feel bad about it, so you still obviously have empathy left. Stupid. You deadpanned, not feeling too good about the fact that their words weren't doing the best to console you. At least they didn't make you hate yourself. Toby and I have had low empathy even before all of this. That had you somewhat intrigued, but still feeling like shit. It made it easier to adjust. In your confusion, you allowed yourself to say something stupid to decompress the air, heavy with moisture and emotion. Funny coming from the mother hen. Instinctively, you lightly elbowed him with a weak smile, quickly pulling your arm back across your torso and letting the smile fall. The spark of a joke, the light, friendly touch. It was so wonderful. Too good for a self-loathing bastard like you. His soft laugh tore through you. Too cute. I taught myself from a young age how to mimic empathy so I could help people I care about. Brian, are we twins or something? He informed, still smiling. I don't actually feel it. Learning more about him, his sweet giggling, that made you feel better. Greedily wanting more information, to grow closer, to feel better, you asked. Taught yourself? I have ASPD. Antisocial personality disorder, baby. Oh, I know all about that. Brian informed you like you were supposed to know what the fuck that meant. Though you weren't stupid, it was an acronym for something or other. You just wanted to feel less shitty, be a dumbass, so you lightheartedly inquired, you have a bunch of fucking letters? Voice peeking at the end of the question, embellishing your playful stupidity. Tim coughed out a surprised laugh beside you. Jesus Christ. Shoulders bouncing with soft, huffing laughs, he began. In more simple terms, you liked the hint of a smug satisfaction he had on his face, knowing something you didn't as he often did. I'm a psychopath. I feel like he's like, Brian seems to be a mix of a sociopath and a psychopath, because psychopaths have the inability to love and strictly use relationships for personal gain. And, you know, if Brian's a psychopath, then I think we all know what that means, but let's pretend that we don't know that. Oh my god, my computer's slow as fuck. I am so sorry, guys. Any day now. Anyway, my bad. Okay, that did make a lot of sense and was not very surprising. The superficial charm, though he'd mentioned offhandedly that he was a theater kid in high school, you assumed that the two aided one another. The acting out of emotion was done in both fields. His general callousness, willing to manipulate, and how well he could do it. It didn't make him a bad person, though he was one. It just explained a lot. Psychopaths tend to be bad people. It's kind of in the name, psycho. One thing that didn't make sense was the strong emotional bond between him and the rest of you. Another dumb question. Well, it's not really a dumb question to ask. Wait, if you're a psychopath, then how are you in love with me? Because that doesn't make sense, because y'all are supposed to not be able to. Because you use people. It's kind of part of the whole thing. I'm pretty trusting because I can't imagine somebody being worse than me, Brian informed you, a little less jovially. I care about you guys. He seemed to read your mind. I try to do my best to empathize and relate to y'all, but with other people it's just... He shrugged. You know? What he said! Like, if I care about people, I'll, like, try to understand, but if I don't, then I don't care. If I don't know you, the chances of me caring is... none. Because why should I? I mean, it's not even just why should I just don't. There's a cat in our house. Why is there a cat in our house? Hold on. One of our cats has gotten in the house somehow. I don't even know how the fuck it got inside. Whatever. Implying that the lack of personal connection made it so he could be completely cut off from all feelings about whatever he did to them. Bars. Though it made you question how he actually saw your relationship. Were you just something to lie to and toy with for his own enjoyment? You thought not. There was no need to lie for personal gain with you or the others, as that would only damage your relationships, making it rougher on him. You wondered when he got diagnosed, if his family was supportive of understanding of his condition. Well, you normally can't get diagnosed with ASPD until after you're 18. And you have to have had, like, symptoms since before you were 15. So. Unlike Tim and Toby, he didn't seem to have some sort of familial baggage. It was either so bad that he couldn't bring himself to talk about it, or it was normal. Fine. Good even. If it was a good upbringing, you wondered if he missed his family, how many siblings he had, what his parents were like. One thing about dating a bunch of legally dead men was they never had to bring you home to their parents. It was bittersweet. Meeting the parents was always a stressful experience. Fathers sizing you up to see if you were good enough to date their child. Mothers being sweet, asking you about how school is and other mildly interesting topics, all while you'd be sitting at the dinner table trying to come across as put together as possible. Yet, meeting someone's parents was always an interesting experience and usually seen as a step in the right direction in the world of dating. You'd never get to meet their parents. That kind of sucked, but at least you had their personal accounts of how their parents were, so far, Tim and Toby's parents weren't the best. Brian was completely unknown. Nodding in newfound understanding, as well as gratefulness that he was comfortable to tell you this, even after finding out about Toby creaming his jeans because of you a few hours ago. You were curious about the boy as well. Asking questions felt nice. What about Toby? You didn't have the will to stop yourself from questioning, learning, deepening your bonds, going with the path of the most resistance, loving, learning, adapting, still fighting against the operator's will and the boy's whims for you to give up already. There was a great flash of white light before Tim began. He doesn't really get it, you know? You turned to him, as a booming roll of thunder cracked through the air. Can't really relate to feeling pain. Wasn't shown much of it growing up either, I think. Empathy? You assumed that's what he meant, but you wanted complete transparency. Yep. Tim nodded. You idly wonder if he wanted a smoke right now. Dealing with Toby, then you, yet unable to light one up in the pouring rain. Dad was a real piece of shit. Mom was a pushover. There was a note of distaste over Toby's father. The man had supposedly greatly contributed to his troubles. You watched him? You got him knowing about Toby's father. He somewhat remembered the man and his hate for him, though he hardly knew shit about his mom. He loved her, she loved him, but he didn't really remember anything other than the idea of being loved. Yeah, Brian spoke, amusement gone. This wasn't knowledge to be smug over because you didn't know it. Not long. Consideration was short. You vaguely recalled Toby boasting about having the shortest consideration period. Shit hit the fan with him real quick. It was very obvious that his home environment was toxic. There was another recollection of him mentioning that he became a proxy a little over 2 years ago. You couldn't imagine being stuck in a situation like that while also being stalked by the twink and his goons. The goons he came to grow close to. The goons that took better care of him than his parents. Basically, he was never able to develop emotional intelligence or proper social etiquette. Brian did his best to summarize simply. Then, there's the lack of care and the insensitivity to pain. Just added up to him not really being able to empathize with others too well. Toby seemed to understand when you were in great emotional distress, as it was very apparent and obvious. Though he never picked up on the smaller things. Social cues were something he couldn't read due to lack of experience, being incredibly sheltered and neglected. You hummed, understanding, feeling empathy that two of your boys couldn't. There was a sense of relief there. At least you could still feel it, though it was wildly skewed, feeling bad for a sadistic murderer's upbringing, but not as bad as when you were drowning somebody. There was a thought of being glad that after the killing you felt horrible, able to understand all too well what you'd done, steal away everything they could have. What about you, Tim? Brian had excluded Tim from the lack of or having little empathy label. He wanted to know why. He looked at you quizzically, asking for clarification. Empathy? Short and sweet, no need to further explain. Yeah, I've got that shit. He let out a huff at his crude confession. It was nice, though, to know he was like you, able to feel it. Yet he admitted to doing his best to block it out, find loopholes around the feeling, avoiding it at all costs, probably to keep his shit together. Still, though, Tim flatly sighed. It gets easier to deal with it the more you do it. He rephrased his earlier words with an air of exasperation. It catches up with you sometimes, though, not like those two. You'd yet to get to the point where every kill didn't make you think yourself to be human garbage. You couldn't block it out and cope with it so much that it wasn't constantly caught up to you. You felt shitty all the time about it, unable to escape from it. Not like you wanted to. You wanted to wallow in your misery as a form of defense. If you could feel the pity for those you'd kill, constantly hate yourself for what you'd done, then you weren't exactly what the twink wanted you to be just yet. You had to suffer to keep from suffering, even more the lesser evil and taking the harder way. Though it was the predictable truth, it didn't bring you the most peace of mind. I was afraid you'd say that. It's what you needed to hear, Tim spoke, matter-of-factly. It was true, from his perspective anyway. You watched him look away, eyes scanning the tree line distantly. His hair was slat now, sticking to his forehead in thick chunks. You could see him shivering. You could see him shivering. From your perspective, it was what you were expecting, but not hoping for. Do you ever you tried to word it antagonistically as you could. Feel bad about certain people? Kills from strangers to people he knew. There had to be some that stuck with him. At least one that hangs over his head near constantly, like Sully's death was for you. Sometimes, Tim responded. No embellishments, just earnesty. There is one that still really fucks with me. He paused, gathering himself. You felt bad making them stand in the rain with you, cold clothes sticking to skin. It wasn't pleasant, but it made every word feel more genuine. The want to convince you to come home as soon as possible had them cutting around the fluff. Even though they were already fairly straightforward, they were never ones to soften their punches. Despite that, sharing painful truths in the cruel environment, suffering together from the cold, it provided solidarity, comfort. It was such teenage horseshit logic, but that's how it was. Alex. The accursed name that popped up every once in a while. Brian's ex, Jay's killer, Tim's first victim. It was confusing. I thought you hated him. You'd think it'd be easier to feel good about killing someone like that. Feel not a shred of empathy for him. Remain angry at the decayed corpse. I did. I still do. Tim's gaze shifted up and around you, to Brian. His dark eyes quickly snapped back to you as a particularly chilly gust of wind blew past the lot of you, cutting through your sopping clothes. There's a good reason I stabbed the asshole in the throat 17 times. Okay. Whoa. You don't just kill somebody like that and not have a searing hatred for them. Yet here he was, saying that Alex's death hung over his head. He continued with a note of rancor. I already forgot how to say that word. I hated him so fucking much after Jay died. I hated him so fucking much that after Jay died, he didn't need to remind you that it was at Alex's hand. Killing him was the only thing that kept me going. Why do you feel bad about it then? You didn't get it. Alex was shaping up to be absolutely irredeemable. He hurt your boys really fucking badly. You wanted to punch his stupid dead face. Me too. Only really figured it out after it became a proxy. Though hate was still evident, there was a pang of melancholy. He was trying to help. Stop us. Him and Brian, maybe Jay. There were others. Oh, maybe Jay, maybe there were others, from being considered. Tim let out an exasperated sigh. So, he killed as many of us. Brian quickly interjected for clarity. His friends, those he believed to be infected. Tim continued, as he could, though he was doing something good, thought he was doing something good, which he kind of was, but Tim looked to the clouds above, heavy and dark. Didn't do much, 'cause now we're here. Alex was shaping up to be more redeemable, actually. Still a dickhole for hurting your boys, but you kind of got it. As horrible as the sentiment was, killing people off so they didn't have to give in to the horrible fate of becoming a proxy. You could advocate for it being worse than death, its cold embrace seeming so much easier to jump into sometimes after just moving ahead. He was trying to play the hero, but he wasn't all self-righteous about it. You wondered if Tim was crying. You certainly were starting to. Something about Alex pulled at your heartstrings. Part of you wished Dan was more like Alex. Instead of getting you and others he knew infected, you wish he just killed you off. Though you didn't completely wish that, grateful to be suffering, being pelted with liquid misery. Yet being surrounded by people who loved and understood you. Honestly, it was his only redeeming quality. It's harder to be completely angry and hateful towards someone over understanding them and feeling bad for their plight. Finding out that they weren't completely rotten to the core like you wanted them to be, much akin to how your relationship with the boys developed. That and the fact that when he was done, he was going to kill himself. Tim looked away from the rustling leaves, the clouds momentarily lit with a white rolling flash. Tim looked tired. Not just because of the fact that he was soaking wet, he looked tired as a whole, all the time. Being the leader, taking the brunt of the twig's abuse, trying to keep it together for the others and you. Had to be so much weight on his back. You'd get him out of this, alleviate his pain. It only made sense. If Alex was going to kill off all those he thought to be infected, then he was the last one standing. It makes no sense to keep on living. After all that he'd done, it'd be moot if he kept on living. Infecting. Didn't work out that way. Tim shuddered as he continued. He was freezing, you bet. In the end, it was just me and Jessica left. Who? Last time I checked on her, she was working for some shipping company, being normal. There was jealousy and relief in his voice, thick and complicated. You weren't going to pry. He was pouring his heart out in a way he thought acceptable. You were going to respect that and let him say what he believed needed to be said, even if the ending message would be for you to give up on your quest to free all of them. But everything after but was never good. Knowing that thing, it won't last. You hoped whoever Jessica was, that she was okay. Being with the boys was great and all, but this sucked. The operator was a horrible little fucker that no one should have to deal with. Having another poor soul under its thumb was the last thing the greedy twink needed. Though you hoped for her normalcy, you couldn't help but agree with Tim. Normalcy was not meant to last. As for me, the monologue was getting pretty long. You never expected Tim to be one to go on like this. After everything, I went to McDonald's and tried to kill myself. Take one for the team, just like Alex was planning to. It was shocking news, but you still got it. Tim took Alex's place as one of the last survivors. He took upon the duty to kill himself, yet he wasn't like Alex. He didn't have the heart to kill Jessica. He wondered if after everything he went through, if he could bring himself to kill her now. Burger King. Brian's odd interjection had you snapping your head to him with furrowed brows. This was a lot already, very heavy and serious information, but here Brian was, correcting Tim. What? Tim reasonably sounded irritated. You got Burger King instead of McDonald's. Then you tried to kill yourself. Brian tutted, somewhat amused at remembering the events leading up to Tim's attempted suicide more than he did. Okay, hold up. You held your hands in a gesture for them to pause. How do you know that? Didn't you, You paused to give Brian a questioning look. Die? Though the operator brought him back to the world of the living, you were never informed when or how he died. You wanted to understand the logistics, further understand them. You wanted to understand the logistics, further understand them. The operator, too. Brian let out a half-hearted laugh, not as vibrant and bright as usual. The rain must really be putting a wet blanket on his mood. Yeah. He glanced to Tim. Roughly 2 months before Tim tried to kill himself, somebody got me thrown out of a window, he weakly joked, trying to lighten the mood a bit. Well, Tim retorted in a huff, meeting his weak level of playfulness, somebody went for the window instead of running. It's not all on me that you fell. Brian hummed, sounding not very convinced. I had nowhere else to run. Could have stopped chasing me. Oh, so you just expect me to stop going after my stalker? Tim chided, shifting his head so some of his wet hair moved away from his eyes, though you could see a smile on his tired lips. Guys, you interrupted their little squabble, smiling. Though it was entertaining, you wanted to start to wrap up the wet heart-to-hearts and go home. Right. Brian caught your drift. It brought me back. Judging from his shift in tone, the furrow of his brow, it was horrible. Disgusting, violating of what you assumed was a comforting embrace away from all his bullshit. When I woke up, I knew. His voice went flat. That's how you knew. Coming back when he'd known himself to have died. Coming back knowing things he shouldn't. Coming back as a proxy. It was a fate worse than death. There was a lull in conversation, only filled in by the roar of water slapping itself into the ground. Constant white noise that was akin to the static, but much quieter, less violent. No pain or loss of bodily control. All there was the three of you. and the uncomfortable weight of the conversation hanging over your heads, as well as the uncomfortable weight of water bogging down your clothes. It made sense for a moment why they didn't believe you to be a possible savior. It was because not even death's cold and bony grip could keep the operator at bay. If it could drag Brian from the fiery depths of hell, then what made you think you could outwit him? What gave you the right, the moxie, the balls to make you believe that you had a chance? It was love. To you, it was the beginning and the end. It got you into this, now it was going to get you out. So, you stared slowly, still processing. Did you do it? Again, Tim repeated. I tried to kill myself. Multiple times. He pointed a fat finger at Brian. This one kept stopping me. Super fucking annoying. There was no genuine anger, annoyance. It was water under the bridge to be laughed at and openly talked about. Though the situation was serious, grim, and grave, the two of them couldn't seem to help but laugh at it, reminding you of yourself. Though they saw their past selves in you, doomed to fail. You saw yourself in them, destined to succeed. Not my fault you wouldn't listen, Brian replied, pushing his back off the tree. This wasn't over just yet. You didn't make a move to get going. Tim huffed, sounding mildly miffed. You think I could read all that code shit you left? He shook his head with a roll of his eyes. At your apartment, before Toby scrambled his brains, Tim read binary like it wasn't even shit. Brian must have taught him in the years since they became proxies. Didn't speak nerd, huh? You looked at Tim, eyes twinkling with amusement. You remembered how calling Brian a nerd bitch got you pinned to a wall with a hand around your neck. Now, though, you knew each other and he wouldn't hurt you over it. He just might give you the cold shoulder, though. Tim grunted out a chuckle. Yeah. He pushed himself off the tree's bark as well. Another cue to leave. You wanted to go home. You wanted to go home too, but you still believed you should suffer. That you didn't deserve domesticity and happiness. If you guys want to head home, that's cool. I'm going to stay out here a little while longer. You didn't need them to say anything about leaving. You had a pretty good idea that they thought you were overstanding in the rain. Why? Tim sharply asked. You looked at him, brows raised in concern, not matching his tone. Why what? You clicked your tongue, not appreciating being talked to that way. Why do you want to be out here alone? Why do you want to be alone out here so bad? He shifted his weight forward, but stopped himself before he took a step closer, before he touched you, being aware of your momentary adversity to the idea. Annoyed at the idea of further suffering and at your clear self-hate, you had a feeling he was going to get aggressively wholesome on you. Because I think I deserve it, you admitted with a weak shrug. I'm stupid, unobservant. You thought back to the horrible death of the survivor, thick-skulled, not giving up, by the way. You insulted yourself, but were sure to add an aside so they knew where you still stood. Tim frowned. I just think that I shouldn't have such... You hummed, trying to choose sickeningly sweet words. Lovely company when I'm a piece of living garbage and I should just... Shut up! Tim snapped, face hardening, speaking sternly but with no hate. You're not dumb, but you should stop trying to fucking isolate yourself. You don't deserve it. You were right about one thing. He was getting aggressively wholesome on you. Your heart fluttered at his words, but you weren't swayed. Your self-hate taking over. I do, though. You laughed, venom dripping from your words despite your smile. Though it was raining, hot tears slipped down your cheeks, mixing with the ice-cold rainwater. I'm the worst. No, you're not. I am, Tim barked, a hand slapping onto his chest. No, you're not, you echoed in disbelief. I am. You're a fucking wonderful and hard-working leader, you stupid bitch. Though it was true, your emotional state had you cursing at him. You're a goddamn delight, Tim. A sweet treat to be around. Sully's voice reverberated in your head as you spoke those words. You parroted him. He always said that in a much kinder way whenever you were feeling down in the dumps about yourself. Why, and for fuck's sake, Tim scoffed. You're not a good person, but you are, you know? He sounded exasperated. tired at your suggestion of being rotten to the core. Though it was hypocritical, you sometimes thought yourself to be all bad, irredeemable. Ironic when you forgave them, people who'd done much, much worse. You got what he was saying, though. By societal standards, you were scum. However, in your situation, you were still trying to be good to others, your boys. Trying to help, give them love, be good to them when you beat yourself up. You were bad, but you weren't all bad. Not quite a good person, but not exactly a complete waste of air. That's a lot coming from Tim. Brian let out a huff. You two are the same person. What? Tim and you shouted in unison, you inching yourself away from the tree. Tim's words resonated with you deeply. You were awful, but not all bad. You didn't deserve this, freezing yourself and trying to deprive yourself of socialization. You are. Tim Bryan, what? Brian held up his hands in mock defense. Stubborn, sharp-tongued. But he perked up with a grin. Very sweet. Once more, you and Tim shouted in a silly unison, I am not nice. The two of you looked at each other, blinking dumbly. Then, the two of you started wheezing, then laughing. Brian quickly joined in while warm happiness filled your guts. Your self-loathing wouldn't magically go away just like that, but with the comparison to Tim, that was way too true. You wanted to like yourself more. Tim was sympathetic, strong-willed, sometimes funny, lovable. My cat's standing outside my door. If you were like him, were you really so bad? You completely pushed yourself away from the tree, looking to follow your boys. Laughter dying down, you glanced at Brian with a smile, his soft gaze of adoration making it wider. Then you looked at Tim, his hand outstretched in a loving offer. You took his hand in yours, glued to the side of his much bigger hand wrapped around yours, pruned from the water but still rough with scar tissue. You didn't see it coming as your gaze was intently fixated on your hands, but there was a soft pressure applied to the side of your smile. You glanced up with raised brows to see Tim quickly pulling away. Oh, did he kiss our cheek? That's so cute. A blush forming on his cheeks. You are nice, he corrected your earlier statement that was said in tandem with his. Surprise, smugness, and adoration flashed across your face in quick succession. So are you. It took a lot of effort to not say, no you. You weren't going to self-deprecate and put him on a pedestal. You were both nice. Sometimes. He blinked, looking like a cat had his tongue, blush deepening. He glanced away into the direction that he came from. You could just barely hear him mumble, fucking cute. Probably just speaking unknowingly to himself. Still made you blush anyway. Your free hand fell to your side. You glanced to Brian, fingers twitching in an offer that he quickly took. Those hands were damp and clammy. They made you feel warm on the inside. The rush wouldn't go away. You wouldn't accept it into your heart, though. You'd feel remorse after every kill. Even if after a while you'd have to force yourself to do so, you would. You'd get your boys out of here while being a shitty person that they loved. Let's go home. I love them. Oh, I hate them. Chapter 47, Gentle Bastardization. NSFW mentions, on God, femboy jokes aren't funny. Keep that shit out of the comments, please. Femboys where? Where are the femboys? I don't see them. Toby wasn't in the house when the lot of you got back. Rivulets? What the fuck? Of water dripping off your clothes onto the floor. You wondered if he was out in the rain, hating himself like you had been. But he was alone because the boys had come for you. There was a pit of guilt deep in your guts about how you made him feel. It made it hard for you to say anything to Tim and Brian as you walked towards the bathroom to shower, giving them a tense white person smile instead as you passed them. The hot water of the shower didn't wash away said guilt. The guilt of the rush, the guilt for making Toby feel bad about creaming his jeans in front of a dead body. Thank you for reminding me. Something he should feel bad about in all honesty, but you knew he wouldn't. His low empathy and horrible circumstances wouldn't allow it. though you had a sinking suspicion that you running outside into a storm as fast as you could in order to avoid him and the others probably had him feeling like wet, hot garbage. Even if what he did was immoral, you still loved him, and the thought of making him feel disgusting made your stomach clench. You had to apologize. Speaking of Toby, the next story I'm going to be reading is a Ticky Toby fic. I don't know what the next one is because it doesn't say it in the title. The title of the story is just called Something Amiss. That's the title. Tim and Brian had returned to their rooms to relax after their own showers. There was a brief period of them mothering you, asking you if you were okay, if you needed to talk more. Though Tim was more abrasive about it, telling you that it wasn't a big deal and that he was just doing what he'd do for anyone else, you didn't doubt that he'd fret over the others in the slightest. In fact, he seemed particularly worried over Brian on the walk back. The man had grown progressively quieter, and by the time you arrived home, he was hardly speaking at all, a thin frown on his lips, brows furrowed. Just a few words here and there to ask how you were, if you needed anything. You dismissed him, told him to get his fine ass into bed and take a nap, trying to get a smile out of him, but not even compliments and a playful smack on his ass could do it. "Oh, Brian, baby, are you okay? Honey?" Tim had fought with you a bit on leaving you be in the living room, telling you not to run off again, that he was worried, cared for you, all that cute, soft shit that had him red in the face. He ran into his room at the speed of light at the suggestion that he was a big softy, deciding he didn't care if you went outside again. Now you sat in the living room alone. The house had grown quiet except for the rain that pelted the roof, a soothing pitter-patter. You'd take a gander that the boys had decided to take a nap. The cold water sapped your strength. You were tired as fuck. You weren't surprised that they were too, although you hadn't slept in 27 hours. You were determined to stay awake for Toby's return, smooth things over the very second he got home. There was the idea of jumping on him, forcing him into a very aggressive hug to show him how much you cared about him, how you wouldn't shrink away from his touch, though you scraped the thought. Exhaustion bogged you down, practically gluing you to the couch, your heavy limbs melting into the sound of the rain. Thud. Though your eyelids had grown heavy, they snapped open the second that the door slammed shut, body jolting with a newfound surge of consciousness. You totally didn't almost fall asleep. Not in the fucking slightest. Groaning, your heavy muscles worked to push yourself into a more dignified position. You let his name be slurred past your lips. Toby. Ryan? A low croak mixed with harsh thuds, growing louder with his approach. Appearing in the doorway, hair wet yet matted, curling against his forehead, lower legs slathered in mud, clothes soaked, stood Toby. "Girl, you're gonna have to take another shower," looking like complete shit. But he was your shit, and the way his face lit up when he saw you made your heart skip a beat. "Hey, buddy." Swaying as you steadied yourself, hands pressing into the couch cushions for support. Toby wasn't one for patience or dramatic pauses. The second you acknowledged his existence with a weak smile, he was running towards you. "Sorry about..." You wanted to get a few more words in before he pounced on you, but the air was forced from your lungs. He'd thrown himself onto you all at once. You let an ugh! Head snapped up to the ceiling with the force, lungs screaming for oxygen. Toby's arms and legs wrapped around your torso. "Yeah, you're gonna have to take another shower, bro." Pressing your arms to your sides with a vice-like grip. You squealed at a pathetic wheeze, fully awake but now in pain. The pain brought on by the aggressively loving embrace of Toby, who buried his head in your shoulder. His cold hair sticking to your neck as he let out a stream of word vomit, fast, shameless, and full of love. "Sorry, I'm so fucking stupid and blind." Water seeped into your clothes from his, akin to how the blood did last night, but this time it was cold and didn't make you feel sick. "I should have made sure that..." He stumbled over his words rather quickly, heaving while his lungs rattled out loud, soft, "No, baby! Why would you make him cry? I hate you. Why would you do this to me?" Cold dirt clinging to your back, wet and heavy. a slight pressure on your back, just like the bark of the tree. You made him feel this way, though you knew it wasn't completely your fault. It wasn't your fault that you were in a scenario where you had to kill people. It wasn't your fault that murder got Toby excited. It wasn't on you that the survivor had mad grit. Props to them for living, but also kind of sucks that they were allowed to see that. Through their disgusted gaze, full of hate and judgment, was a wake-up call in the moment. You couldn't imagine that being the last thing you saw before you died. Their final moments were used for telling you that you were too comfortable, that your vices weren't as justifiable as you wanted them to be, that you and your boys were so much worse than you thought. The lot of you only growing more rotten with each passing day. The gaze was deserved, punishing yet helpful at the same time. Hey. You did your best to tug your arms from his grip to no avail, wanting to rub his back. I get it. You weren't going to tell him that it was okay, even if you wanted to. It wasn't okay. What he did was shitty. What you did was shitty. Yeah, for singles like, don't just blame him. You're at fault here too because you encouraged it. You understood, but that didn't justify the both of your actions. I thought that they were dead too. You forced the gross words out of your mouth with the cringe, a reminder that you practically fucked in front of a dead body. Assumed too. His koala hug didn't lessen in the slightest. I know, but they weren't, and I fucked you up. He didn't give a shit about the now dead survivor. The disgusting act of grinding before bashed in rib cages and faces mangled into expressions of terror. He just knew that you were upset. I'm sorry. As an adult, and because Toby wasn't the best at reading between the lines, it was best to be transparent. Look, Toby, I get that we got too into it. I don't ever want to do something like that again. He stiffened on your lap, his fingers curling in your shirt, most likely thinking you were turned off by the idea of sexual contact with him. In front of dead bodies or people, you clarified, not wanting him to further feel bad about himself, as well as the truth that sex sounded cool and good. Just not right now. He'd recently knocked the air from your lungs. It was getting your leggings and stolen t-shirt wet. White and baggy. Brian's, and of course it said something stupid. In bright pink text were two chemical symbols spelling out simply hose. From the elements holmium and Einsteinium. Wow. It was the kind of shirt annoying nerd boys wore and thought was the peak of comedy. The kind of shirt your annoying nerd boy wore. You continued, ignoring the crushing weight against you and the mud now covering you after you just showered. I love you. He perked up, removing his head from the crook of your neck so you could finally see his face. And I understand how you feel about... His bottom lip was quivering, eyes red and glistening, cheeks flushed, slick with rainwater and tears. The missions. You couldn't help but shiver. Babying a cold-blooded killer, telling him that you understood that he liked killing. Though you weren't gonna tell him murder was okay, there was still a pang of morality that wouldn't fuck off. It told you how wrong this was, having to force yourself to talk about murder like it was something much more casual. Like it was a guilty pleasure that wasn't that bad. That you have fun, get excited. Though you weren't going to beat around the bush, you weren't going to talk about murder, then say the word horny. But I don't feel the same way about that. I'd love to do something with you. He blinked, hopefully, a tear streaking down his red face. But I still need time to get over that. Though he apologized, verbally and with his actions, spelling out his desperate need for your forgiveness, you still needed time. It was just a tad traumatizing, and the idea of sex with Toby came with a bitter murmur that were their last words. Please, I won't tell anyone what I saw. These people, they killed my friends, and then they started dry humping, and the other dude creamed his jeans. Ugh. He didn't seem thrilled at the idea of waiting, but he understood that you were deeply uncomfortable. Though he was okay with fucking in front of of corpses, half dead people too, he wanted you to be the happiest you could be, and you were glad that he understood. He pressed a chaste kiss to your temple, nodding slowly in understanding. With a sniffle, he croaked. So you still want to do something like that with me, but like... He mimicked your very PG description of sex, and as he paused to gather himself, you heard a door in the hallway open, the sound quickly repeating after a few footfalls. You just need some time? Rapidly blinking, the last of his tears falling away, upset but hopeful. Yeah. His grip loosened but didn't let up. I don't know how long, so I don't want to promise you anything soon, but I do want to do things with you. You were able to lift your arms, wrapping them around his back. He was so cold, freezing, but not shivering. Toby couldn't feel it. After all, he had CIPA. It still made you worry. Honey, you need a shower. You're going to get sick. Tilting his head dumbly, a smile finally twitched on his lips. I won't get sick, Ryan. These stupid motherfuckers. That was all you could think while you poured the yellow powder into the boiling water. They were all absolutely silly. Clowns, you could say. Let me guess, they're all fucking sick. I won't get sick. Get sick. And me, when my family's like, don't come near me, you're gonna get sick. I'm not gonna get sick. Get sick. Anyway. You didn't know what happened to Brian, but right after his shower, he'd curled himself into a blanketed roll and been laying like that for hours. Tim had checked in on him some time ago and had been trying to help him out since. Tim may have been alright, but Toby and Brian were not. Toby had a bad case of the sniffles. Brian didn't seem sick, but he wouldn't get out of bed, not talking too much unless asked about nerd shit. When you first learned of a situation, you tried to help by asking him about nerd shit, and oh boy, did he info dump on you. You could hardly remember jack shit about what he said, all of it spoken in a low, droning mumble. It was the most he'd spoken since this morning, so that was good, and hearing him talk about things he loved always made you smile. You were assuming that he was having a rough day mentally. You didn't know if he struggled with depression, but in your situation, you wouldn't be surprised. There were no kinds of medications in the house for them. They all just dealt with their shit in whatever way they could, which was a terrible idea, but it was safe to assume that they had no fucking healthcare working under the twink. There was also his autism. Certain sensory experiences were very rough for him to experience. The rainwater coldly bogging down his clothes for so long may have been a culprit. He was always very picky about his dress, exclusively wearing loose-fitting cotton t-shirts and hoodies. Nothing else. He hated zippers, and one time he told you with the scariest expression you'd seen on him since the alleyway how much he hated velvet and polyester workout-type clothes. Velvet is a nightmare. I hate looking at it, and I hate touching it. It's infuriating. Soaping and sopping wet clothes that clung to his body, much like the workout shirts he hated so much, was probably upsetting. I hope you feel bad, YN. I hope you feel bad. Feeling bad that you dragged him outside, but thankful that he did, you opted to make dinner. Tim was too busy worrying over his boys. Brian wrapped up in his bed with Toby laying at his side. Oh, babies. You had to grab a blanket from his room to give to him, as you didn't want to disturb the now comfy Brian. When you gave him the blanket, you noticed something. Motherfucker took one of the dresses that Brian had stolen for you at the mall for himself, putting it on after his shower, which you had to chorus him into. Toby's wearing one of my dresses. Oh, I bet he looks great. I bet you look amazing, King. Green and flowy, it spread around his scrunched up formals beautifully. You had no idea when he snatched it from your overflowing suitcase, but he claimed it was soft, comfortable, and offered a lot of leg movement, kicking his legs about weakly to show you, all while he sniffled pathetically. You shrugged it off, not getting fussy about it for multiple reasons. For one, he was sick and you wanted him to do whatever he could to make himself feel better. As long as it wasn't something horribly obscene, as well as the fact that it didn't really bother you that he was in a dress, Though he was sick, nostrils clogged, and voice growing weak, he seemed very happy with the article of clothing, curling his fingers around the bottom. It was yours, comfortable, and the boy shared everything, so why shouldn't you? Although Tim was weirded out by the idea for a moment, visibly cringing because he was probably raised in an environment where men, being anything but manly men, was seen as odd and bad. He let the boy be with a soft smile. He saw how happy he was despite being sick. Wearing a dress didn't make Toby any less of a man. He wasn't particularly feminine either. He was just wearing the equivalent of a long t-shirt that was ornate and pretty. Ornate and pretty. Ornate? I think either works, actually. I don't know. When you told him that he looked cute in it, he shot up and tried to kiss you. Tim had to shove him back into bed and yell at him to rest while you suppressed a giggle. Now, here you were, in the kitchen, no fucking clue what you were doing. You read the instructions, but you didn't think the soup was supposed to boil over the rim of the pot and leak onto the stovetop. Probably not. Shit! You hissed as you shoved the pot off the heat. The yellow bubbles splashing over the pot's sides, a droplet of boiling soup scalding your skin. Recoiling, letting go of the pot, you looked to the mess of liquid and overcooked pasta. It looked like hot garbage and piss. Why do I smell burning? Tim shouted from Brian's room as you scrambled to snatch bowls from the cupboards. Slamming the ceramic onto the counter, you whipped your head to the stove. The heat was still on. The puddle of soup and noodles that had boiled over and spilled past the pot's rim were grossly bubbling on the stovetop like wiggling maggots. Ew. Fuck! A hand flew forth, twisting the oven's knob with a few soft clicks until the heat was off. It didn't completely disappear right away, though, the yellow soup darkening into orange that was quickly darkening into a bubbling black muck. YN? Is the fucking kitchen on fire? You could tell Tim had left his post from the harsh footfalls that thundered in the hallway. He was coming. Oh god, oh fuck, he was coming. No? You called over your shoulder. How dare he think that you of all people would set the kitchen alight? You were shit at this, but not that shit. He stormed into the room with a huff, obnoxiously smelling the air as he came closer. I was scanning the room, almost instantly landing on the stove. Jesus fucking Christ, YN. Exasperation evident. How do you fuck up soup? Soup is not that hard to make. Whatever. Exasperation evident, a hand coming up to his hair and pushing it out of his face. You knew you fucked up if Tim, a competent man with many things except cooking, looked tired and worn just by looking at what you'd done. Today had been a long day. Tim may have been an abrasive, rude, loud, mannerless fool, but at least he helped out with the mess in the kitchen. He wasn't nice about it at all, though, at least on a surface level. Compliments with Tim weren't very forward and often behind thinly veiled insults. From sayings like, "How are you this incompetent? What would you do without me?" to, "At least it's edible. Not the worst I've ever had, though. Nice job, dumbass." Once the kitchen was clean and bowls were filled with soup, he'd yet to shut trap. I'll take the bowls to Brian's room. You'll probably drop them all and hurt yourself somehow. Rude, Tim insisted, trying to reach for the two bowls you held. One for you and him while he held Toby and Brian's. No, you huffed, stepping away from him. There was no way you trusted his dumbass to carry 4 bowls in his oversized, manlet hands. Manlet hands is crazy. I got it. You don't know what he thought he was doing. There was no way for him to hold that many bowls. Like you got the soup? Tim chided as you slowly stepped around him, neither of you willing to lunge or run, the soup still scalding. Heat seeping through the ceramic. I was a waitress for years, Timbert. You spat the overly white person-esque sounding name at him as you exited the kitchen. I'm not going to drop them. Timbert? Tim parroted in a scream, pausing his gait to dumbly stare. Chuckling and dropping your careful walk, you haughtily informed him. It's a nickname. Get used to it. It was cuter than Leaderman, and the others had cute nicknames. It was high time you gave Tim one, even if it was dumb as shit. Oh my god, it's light outside. It's 7:16 in the morning. Ellipses. He kept opening and closing his mouth, not exactly knowing how to respond. We were just about to let out a laugh, walk away with the last words before he finally spoke. Whatever. He averted his gaze while shuffling into the living room, coming closer. Dummy. With a bark of giggles, you shifted closer to him, butterflies in your tummy, fluttering like a motherfucker at the newfound nickname that was just so Tim. Rude, but not like when he called you a bitch for days on end. It was softer, and it made your heart soar. You felt a softly smug smile creep onto your lips as you looked at him, pink cheeks and looking huffy. He didn't move away from your close facial proximity, but he didn't seal the deal either. Taking the lead for your leader, you quickly leaned in and placed a peck on his lips with an obnoxious mwah. I do that whenever I kiss Brian. I'm like, mwah. It's really obnoxious too. I have to do it like that. Pulling away, you got to take in the intoxicating sight of his flabbergasted expression, dumbly blinking with the ghost of a smile on his agape lips. Anyway, you take a practice turn, soup hardly sloshing its contents. Come on, slowpoke. You didn't wait up for him, walking confidently down the hall with a stupid grin. A stupid grin that faded when you pushed open Brian's ajar door. Said man didn't even look up at you as you carefully padded into the room. You could only see his face, everything else shrouded in thick blankets, curled up and tense. In his company was Goober. The dog was laying beside him, cuddled up against the massive blankets, eyes closed and steadily breathing, sleeping peacefully, cuddled up to Brian in an attempt to make him feel better, just like he'd done for you back at your apartment with your panic attacks. He still did so. Sometimes things got to be too much. Even with all your boys' support, progress wasn't linear or easy after all. Fingers being drummed too loudly or accidental knocking had your heart rate skyrocketing. Sudden touches from behind could sometimes have you shrieking. Despite the fact that the ones who caused your trauma were the ones you'd fallen for, they still fucking caused your trauma. Sometimes you needed someone else to comfort you, someone soft and fuzzy, someone who drooled everywhere and had 4 legs. Goober. He wasn't a trained service dog, but he was good enough at comforting you during your wheezing panic attacks. Filled with babbling and hitched sobs, you were sure his comforting presence helped Brian out at least a little bit. He was a soft guy. Earlier in the evening, you saw the man laying face down in his bed, Goober digging at his sheets and yipping in an attempt to get a response. You theorized the only reason you could see his face was because Goober was worried and wanted to make sure he wasn't dead or something. Toby loudly sneezed into his elbow, obnoxiously snorting mucus back into his throat as he looked at you. Is that from me? Tim entered the room. Yeah. Toby looked at him, frowning that you wouldn't be the one to deliver him sustenance. Now shut up and eat. Dinner wasn't eaten in silence. The clinking of spoons on ceramic, Tim's loud slurping, and Toby's sniffling filled the room. This was normal. This was fine. Silence wasn't very common in this household. Toby tried to chatter, but every time he did, Tim would tell him to shut his trap and conserve energy. He was sick after all, and his voice was scratchy and hoarse. It took Toby roughly 9 shut-ups to actually keep quiet, forlornly leaning over Brian's cocooned form. He was as quiet as he could be. His tics still had him occasionally grunt. Thankfully, he was doing his best to suppress his tics in his right arm, not wanting to pour hot soup on the mound of blankets that was Brian. Oh, Jesus. The entire time, Brian had stayed quiet, not even a soft slurp while he ate, just blank-faced and depressingly apathetic. He wasn't in a good place. The not talking was something that he often did when upset. You'd still talk at him. If he didn't respond, that was fine. If he did, then maybe you could have a light-hearted conversation with him. Do your best to keep his mind off his shitty day. Spinning the last of your kind of shitty dinner into your mouth and swallowing, you asked, "Reading any good books lately?" Glancing at his bedside table, a stack of books full of colorful tabs of notes sticking out neatly between their pages, The only one without colorful tabs was your little booklet of crossword puzzles. It had become acutely domestic routine for the two of you to fiddle with your books separately before bed on nights you slept with Brian, which you assumed would be more frequent with Toby sick and the events of last night. You crossed one leg over the other, sitting on the edge of his bed right beside Brian, brushing your hand through his hair lightly. Tim had sat himself a few feet away from you, leaning back with one hand pressing into the blanketed surface of Brian's leg. You didn't know how someone could look so apathetic being so coddled, but you wanted to see him smile. You wanted him to feel better. Two dull hazel eyes glanced dimly in your direction. Oh, my baby boy. Brian, honey. All you got in response was him lazily looking to the books before he set the bowl on the nightstand. For dinner, he'd let his arms wiggle free from the warm prison, looking like a hatching cocoon. Cocoon. With a soft clink of ceramic on wood, his arms retreated back into the blanket, disappearing from view. You'd take that as a... Okay, you had no fucking clue. When at first you don't succeed, try again. Looking for something else of mild interest to talk about, you found jack shit. With a soft grunt of effort, you pushed yourself up from the mattress and stacked your dirty bowl atop Brian's. Something caught your eye, the dull shine of a blackened screen, smudged with greasy fingerprints, rimmed by favorite colored plastic. Your phone. Hey! Holy shit! I haven't seen this thing in forever, you marveled, taking it into your hands while sitting back onto the bed. Last time you saw the thing, Brian was reading horribly sexual texts about him and the others. You looked down at the handheld device with a pang of sorrow. You miss Sully. While you pressed the on button, dim light illuminating your face, Tim spoke. Christ, if I wanted to be objectified at 7 p.m., I'd... Oh my God. He stopped himself. No, please, Timbert. Continue. You peeled your eyes from your and Sully's smiling faces into Tim's softly mortified one. Tell us where you'd get objectified at 7 p.m. Tutting, crossing one leg over the other once more. Timbert? Toby snorted. You turned to him, a wad of his napkin in each nostril, voice raw and nasally, a crooked grin on his face. YN? Tim's voice held a weak warning, one you completely ignored. Nickname, you informed, idly dialing in your passcode, 8008. So, you turned from Toby to Tim. Are you going to fill us in or what? Clicking your tongue while Toby weakly snickered, chanting, Timbert, Timbert, Timbert. He blinked, lips forming into a tight line. What kind of embarrassing shit do you have on that thing? Avoiding the question, he pointed a thick finger at your phone before whipping his head to Toby and shushing him. Cackling, you looked at the screen. It was fully charged. Letting Tim's blunder slide so he wouldn't get too pissy, you hummed while sliding your thumb across the cool yet uneven surface. It had been cracked from all the falling you'd done way back when. Brian not only charged the thing, but he also connected your phone to their Wi-Fi. You still had no clue how he got Wi-Fi set up in the first place or what provider he was most definitely mooching off of. Though your phone most likely had its SM card removed, you could still use the internet. You could still use your shitty social media with less of a chance of getting pinged. Humming in interest, you opened up a single act. One of the first things you noticed was that you were still logged into your account, cursedly named Cummy in my tummy. That's insane. What the fuck is wrong with you? This book is so unserious. You tapped on your profile, seeing heaps of square thumbnails, mostly containing you and Sully. With wide eyes, your head whipped to Brian. Did you ever open up TikTok? You gasped, one hand placing itself on the mound of blankets. Heat rising to your cheeks and a horrid feeling of dread mixed with embarrassment filling your organs. Tic-tac. Either at your chalk fear or both, the tiniest of smiles played on Brian's lips. Oh, God. Progress. If you had to embarrass yourself to make him smile and feel better, then so be it. With a curt nod, your stomach dropped while it was filled with butterflies. This sucked, but you were doing it for your bumblebee. I'm going to call... Next time I talk to Brian, which is probably going to be later when they wake up, I'm going to call him Bumblebee and see what his reaction is. What the fuck is Tic Tac? Tim demanded. He's like a fucking old conservative white dad. Oh, Timothy Wright. Tim demanded. You turned to him, his face filled with interest and mild disgust. TikTok, you corrected, looking at the video thumbnails on your profile. Mostly you and Sully. He initiated the videos most of the time. Though he had an account of his own, he wanted you to post some. Purposefully bad dancing and offbeat lip syncing, whipping and nay-naying together while overly acted voices screamed about cheating. Whipping and nay-naying. Oh my god. Who even whips and nay-nays anymore? Like, actually, I don't think I've done that since I was in middle school. Not middle school. Whoa. 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 I haven't whipped or nay-nayed since I was in elementary school. Oh, God. That's just embarrassing. Oh. Ugh. What's TikTok? Toby inquired, bed creaking as he crawled toward you. From your peripherals, you could see him carefully climb over Brian, a blanket draped over his back while the dress hung loosely off his chest. Titties! Sighing, trying to remove yourself from the growing sense of silly shame, you filled him in. It's a video sharing app. He probably had no idea what the fuck that meant. Where you can lip sync to stuff. People usually dance or make dumb videos and shit. Huh. Toby raised his brows, processing the best he could. He once asked you what Facebook was. You were sure the whole social media thing to him was completely foreign. One of his hands brought itself up to your phone screen, not quite touching it, but coming close and pointing to a particular thumbnail. Is that you? A still of your smiling face, clearly trying not to cry laugh. You remembered that night. It was your happiest before the cabin happened. Just days before, actually. Yeah. A frown wavered on your lips as your thumb hovered over the image. Video of me and my old coworkers. Almost everyone was there that night. Somehow the stars aligned for once, only a handful of people missing out. You'd all stayed after hours to read customer complaints stockpiled through the weeks. Sully, Emil, April, even your flaky manager Jackson was there, laughing, smiling, hearts beating. Though Jackson was probably still kicking, he never showed his face at the diner when the boys were stalking you. The lazy asshole was almost certainly off their radar. Said video was following the format of another video, though that one had gone viral. You couldn't quite remember if it was your or Sully's idea. Maybe Emil's. The emo teenager was always on his phone, willing to throw his ass in a circle for some internet fame. Either way, the video started with your smiling face as you walked into the bathroom, pushing open the door as people began to unanimously hum. It was some video game theme, a hymn-like vibe. Nearly 30 people, the entire staff at the hot and crusty diner, were stuffed into an itty-bitty bathroom. 2 people standing on the toilet, 1 on the sink, everybody else shoved together with their arms raised at their sides. Many looking confused, middle-aged parents who didn't quite get the younger generation's sense of humor. Yet going along with it anyway, because it seemed to make so many of you happy. Can I see? Oh my god, itchy. Toby's voice pulled you from your thoughts, a wet heaviness weighing down your lower eyelids. Bittersweet nostalgia had yet to fade, but you were reminded that you were here now. With those that took normalcy and Emil away from you. Toby slit his throat right after Brian bashed his face in next to the cash register. A dull pang of anger accompanied the strong surge of amusement. Tim shifting his weight to coyly come closer for a better view. Your mind reminding you that you'd yet to receive an apology from the stubborn bull of a man. Sure. His eyes wide with wonder as he looked at your phone, unseen territory of your life for him. Give me a sec. With that, you pressed your thumb to your stupid grin. Days before your life went to hell, running through every fucking ring of it, and only going deeper with each passing day. Tormentors turning to lovers while the blood stained your skin. The devil wasn't on your side, but luck seemed to be at times, though viewing the stupid video was for their enjoyment. There was the underlying desire that with every bonding moment, every little laugh, they'd start to see your side of things. finally side with you and try to get out. Tim looked scared. Toby was screaming, pounding his fist into the mattress. Again. Your stomach hurt, not from self-hate that filled you, but with a painful dread. Not with a painful dread, but from laughter. Toby's was infectious. He played the video once more. Toby may not have completely understood the reference to internet culture, but he seemed to be one for absurdism, greatly enjoying the video free of context. His laughter mixed with yours and Tim's clear fear had Brian softly smiling. Success. Success. You really liked making those, huh? Brian spoke up after the 9th replay, just barely comprehensible, a soft inquiry. Pressing the off button, much to Toby's chagrin, you flickered your gaze to Brian, eye bags deep and smile weak. Yeah, you missed your coworkers. As fickle as they could be with covering your ships and actually doing their jobs right, they were still good people. Some of them which had their lives taken too early, one by you and two by them. You still weren't over that. You probably would never be. Thinking back to the diner, things were a lot different. Even before they revealed themselves to you, you were still paranoid. Though you thought you were safe, somewhat, there was still a looming sense of incoming doom with a startling lack of normalcy. At one point, you started to somewhat warm up to them, thinking of them as possible friends, a potential turning point for your shattered mental health. You did become more than just friends, but when you figured out who they were, you thought of them as the literal scum of the earth. You knew how your opinions shaped and twisted, but you didn't know how they came to view you as a plaything to someone worth smooching. Oh my god, my back is killing me, dude. It itches. My everything itches, actually. My leg itches. It's because I'm like hairy and my socks are like rubbing against it, so it's itchy. Okay, where am I at? What did you guys think of me at the diner anyways? You set your phone face down in your lap, changing the subject away from TikToks. Smiling, amused at the idea of somewhat hateful reminiscing. Every time I saw you smile, Brian croaked, voice rising from a whisper to something much more confident. I wanted to grab you by the hair and bash your head into the table. Bar. Oh my god. Just like a meal. He delivered the news with a blank face and even tone, void of empathy that he could not feel, his eyes flickering between yours slowly. Your smile fell into a frown. Not as fun as you thought. You were forcibly reminded of Emil's broken nose, blood forced from his twisted nostrils, long black hair held tight in Brian's hand, his questions of why. He never got an answer for his death, but you did. He found it stupidly senseless, out of Brian's petty spite. He continued despite your alarm. He was never one to hide things from you. Actually, I was disappointed you found us out so quickly. I was planning on giving you a good scare by putting Isaac's bones on your couch. That took your breath away, although not like Toby had hours before, not literally. You were at a momentary loss for words, them moving his bones, making it so you could avoid jail time, conviction, just so they could continue to toy with you was some sick shit. You never knew what they'd done with the bones as you never saw them, in your apartment or in the cabin. Apparently, they took the bones with them from their resting place behind a Walmart. Where did you... You could feel your mouth go dry, growing anxiety making you restart your sentence with a lick of your lips. Where did you put the bones? There was a slight movement from the there was a slight movement of the blankets, perhaps a shrug. They just threw them away. Forgot where. Baffled, you let yourself fall quiet and just stare at him. Not picking up on your distress, Toby chimed in. Brian had to stop me from stabbing you multiple times. I feel so safe. A sharp chill ran itself down your spine. Toby wouldn't hurt you now. Not too badly, anyway. All those weeks ago, Brian must have had to keep him on a tight leash. You remember distantly how Toby sat with Brian towards the end. You knew how impulsive he could be, his clear lack of patience and tact. It must have been a real struggle for him. Mouth agape and blinking dumbly, you asked, "You only had butter knives at the diner, though." Cracking his neck to the side, he continued, voice still a sweet chirp. "Exactly." What is that supposed to mean, Toby? The words fell past your lips, brows knit in concern. Past you was so fucking lucky that you didn't get gutted, impaled, beheaded, sliced, and diced. A grin formed on his lips, big and boyish. You know. He leaned his face close to yours, the bottom of his eyes crinkled in wicked delight, voice dropping slightly. That I'm strong enough to stab you with a butter knife, Angel. Okay. Cool. There it was again. A pang of fear and a shot of intoxicating delight. He wouldn't hurt you, but he fucking could, and you were into that. I love a man that could beat my ass. Not literally. Please don't hurt me. Although you still needed time to really get into things with him again. After all, the last time you felt this way with him, you dry humped him in front of a dead body. The thought of a dead body that wasn't really dead body. The thought of being pierced by dull blades was mildly amusing, but mostly alarming. He could have completely rocked your shit. You were glad you didn't perish that way. You'd hate to be the pathetic fuck stabbed to death with a butter knife. Your face turned hot but stony, the bitter memory of Emil's death on your mind, throat slit by the smiley boy before you. Though you directly asked for their opinions, thoughts, feelings, knowing it was going to end bad, you still felt like a fool. They tricked you. Not for long, a few days really, but still, these dumbass hooligans had you fooled. A part of you thought they'd soften up their words, go easy on you, although you knew you wouldn't be satisfied with sugar-coated bullshit. You wanted to hear their dirty details, cement in your mind that you were hated dearly, that they were awful, but things impossibly turned around, that anything could change. You had no room to be pissy about it, but you were still upset, and that was fine. You just wouldn't grievously injure them like you had not so long ago whenever they came close, pissing you off just by their proximity. You didn't, you bluntly replied, not wanting to feed into his power play. I stabbed you, though. Clearly clawing for some sort of edge other than the heap of love you held over all their heads. You were a motherfucking drug that was one bitch to give up on, but you didn't want to cut them all off from it. You were looking to have them overdose. You didn't want to get into a catfight with them anyway. His mouth made an oh. Only because I let you. Oh, bullshit, you tutted, uncrossing your arms. I got you fair and square. You just don't want to admit it. You wouldn't doubt him letting you win, but your pride had momentarily resurfaced, angry and strong. I let you go, Toby pouted, opening his mouth to speak once more, but the words wouldn't come out, only in turning his head from you, knocking it back, or snapping his head forward with a booming two blurs of white flying across the room and slapping onto Brian's bedroom wall. Ew. 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 Sticking thick snot acting as a green glue. Disgusting yet impressive. That is nasty. That is nasty. Jesus, kid. Tim barked in half-hearted disgust, spoken with a laugh. I would murder him. He was impressed too. No one got up to clean it up. You were all gross. Ew. So nasty. Toby sniffled, rubbing his nose with a gloved finger. Bless you. You spoke the nicety out of habit. Habit? I'm just being... Don't encourage him, Tim deadpanned as Toby shot you a grin. You could see Brian softly smiling, warm and loving. I'm just being polite, you huffed, snapping your head to him. Something you weren't very good at while you were at the diner. Or ever, actually. How was I impolite? He slapped a hand onto his chest, shaking his head. You literally stared at me all the fucking time. It was super creepy and like, you clicked your tongue. Really fucking obvious. You can't believe this idiot tricked you. I stared at you all the time, Brian interjected. When you looked at him, he had a playful smile, smug and satisfied. You never caught on to me. Yeah, you nodded, feeling disgust and fear boil in your veins. Because you're good at what you do. The words came out slowly and awkwardly. Complimenting him on his alarming skill set was foreign. So am I, Toby chirped, sniffling obnoxiously. Not at stalking, Tim snidely commented, which was true. His stalking game was awful. And YN? Yes? You batted your eyelashes childishly at him. Tim sighed, though he could not hide his smile, warm and caring as he spoke. I literally hated you so fucking much. Wow, really? I couldn't fucking tell Timothy. Though we laughed at the memories, there was a weighty awkwardness to it. Every time I saw you, I got so mad that I wanted to vomit. I almost threw our plans out of the window a few times. There was no regret for his actions, no hesitation in admitting he almost killed you. Their actions led you to where you were after all. Yet it was still obvious he felt shitty about it. The knitted brows, the averted gaze, words getting quieter the more hateful they got. It was clear as day. It wasn't a surprise. Tim was a naturally very angry and easy to set off person. Your whole throwing a bowl at him and getting away thing must have put a massive dent in his ego. So, you still couldn't help but shudder, nervous energy having you fidgeting with your phone. What changed? It was almost alarming how quickly things had turned around. You didn't even really notice your growing feelings for them until they were shoved in your face. Toby and Brian's straightforwardness when it came to romance really set things off. Though you wanted to be loved, and when you eventually realized your feelings in this scenario, where they didn't quickly show you how they felt, you definitely would have made the first move. That didn't happen. They stepped up to the plate with their hearts unabashedly on their sleeves. Tim took quite a lot of time and was still clawing his way out of his thick shell of romantic repression. But that didn't change the fact that he'd gone from threatening to bash your brains in to accepting a quick kiss only a few minutes ago. Silence. Well, save for Toby's sudden grunt that came with a soft pop. You did your best not to jump to the conclusion that you were just there and willing, easy, though anxiety whispered in your ear that it was the truth. You told your anxiety to shut the fuck up. The boys were just taking their time to properly articulate their feelings. The only one good with their words was Brian, and he wasn't feeling too chatty, being depressed and having been nonverbal for quite a few hours before dinner. You weren't looking for verbal essays or word vomit. Simple answers were fine as long as they just said something. Anything. Being emotionally constipated was a character trait for Tim at this point, yet he was the leader, the one to take charge when no one else had. He spoke first, much to your delighted surprise. You got Moxie. Speaking clearly with an embarrassed confidence. Noticed that the night we met. When couples reminisced about their first meeting, it was usually cute and silly. With you guys, they tried to end your life, taunting you, chasing you, shooting you. Putting a boot to your stomach, killing your old best friend and kinda ex. It was one fuck of a bad first impression. Wow, really? Though he was still shit with words, Tim had a growing habit of monologuing. Big balls. They may have been respectable in the 3 Faces of Death, but that didn't answer why they had romantic feelings for you. You're hot. Not the most romantic thing to hear, but this was Tim you were talking to, and the compliment made your cheeks heat up and your stomach flutter. You get it. The trauma, the fear of being under him that came with time experienced by their sides. Your dark brown eyes meeting your own, soft and serene. Sweet. It almost sounded like a question, spoken apprehensively, not because he didn't believe his words, but because he wasn't used to being romantically forward, honest about his true opinions of you. It was unbelievably vulnerable, and you didn't know what to say, a wide smile on your lips as you admired his blushing face. And dumb, Tim quickly added, quickly insincere with the insult. Clearly insincere with the insult, averting his gaze with a smirk. It's endearing, though, Brian added onto Tim's comment, rewording his remark. Your stupidity. You turned to him, a small smile on his lips and hair poking out of the blanket tightly wrapped around his head. got you so far, honestly. If you were more of a survivalist type, you definitely would have overanalyzed everything. We deal with those types quite a lot. This was the most he'd spoken since this morning. We deal with stupid as well, but not your brand of it. Meaning? You didn't think that was an insult, but as someone who craved validation, you'd take it as long as it wasn't genuinely an insult. If it was, no sex for a week and a fat lecture on respect. Okay. Lots of people are stupid as fuck. But, Toby chimed in, shifting his weight back and forth in his palms, we like your stupid, keeping us on our toes, even we could totally kill you whenever we wanted to. Thanks, King. That makes me feel better. His enthusiasm sent another chill down your spine. They were 10 steps ahead, back at the diner, and at the cabin you lived because they got cocky, leisurely with killing. They went easy on you, but you still managed to surprise even the most seasoned killers with your wit. Go you. You're just so fun to be around, too. Letting his head wave back and forth to get out the restless energy, seeming lackadaisical almost. I don't know, I just like you. There was a juvenile innocence there, but that wasn't quite it. It was inexperience, lack of love, lack of opportunities to love. Though you could interpret as you just being convenient, you knew that he couldn't choose how he felt. It wasn't because you were there and willing. It was because you were you and he liked that. Simple as that. You're also naive, Tim mumbled, setting his empty bowl on his lap. Sometimes. You had a feeling he was referring to your almost childishly delusional dream of getting the lot of you from the operator's grasp. You weren't innocent in the fucking slightest, but the idea was stupidly naive. He didn't mean it in the way that you were stupid, inexperienced, and in need of protection. You'd clearly proven yourself to be a fighter. A dirty one at that. Fighting dirty got you this far. You understand boundaries and communication. Brian astutely spoke of your character, cutely over-analytical. Way too forgiving, though. His voice dropped from a hint of warmth to flat. He was upset, concerned for your well-being. Yeah, Tim nodded. You seriously should still be kicking and screaming, you know. He worded it snottily, but it came out in a tone of a concerned lover, of how he really felt. Glad you're not, but seriously, you probably should be. I would be. I mean, yeah, you idly rub the back of your neck. I get what you mean, but you should know that I haven't completely forgiven you guys for all the shit you pulled. Shrugging while you delivered the news, looking into their faces to take in any reactions. But that doesn't change the fact that you're people that I enjoy being around, or the fact that I find y'all genuinely attractive. Their faces only lit up at your words, getting your underlying hatred and accepting your apparent love. You guys do bad things, but you're good people to hang with. You shrugged. You're all very different people, and each of you have your own unique, appealing characteristics. You were starting to sound like Brian, using big words like a wannabe big-brained Reddit boy. Except Brian was actually astute. You're all sweet and funny. You ended things simply, akin to Toby's manner of speech. I just love you guys, you know? You lightly elbowed Tim, parroting the phrase he commonly put at the end of sentences, forming them into rhetorical questions. You were your own person, but you'd picked up on a few of their mannerisms on the way, them giving bits of themselves to you, building you up after so harshly breaking you down. Red-faced, Tim dumbly opened and shut his mouth. Toby shot forward, hairy arms tightly wrapped around your front while his face pressed into your back. He rocked the two of you back and forth as he gushed. We love you so fucking much. Oh, this is going to be a 2-hour-long video. That's crazy. The role of man in blankets and Brian shifted, tiredly smiling at the both of you. You really do. He didn't reach out a hand to touch you. That was fine. He was being affectionate on his own terms in his current state. But I'm assuming you also want to hear what had us realizing our feelings. Nodding, you gently put your arms over Toby's. Tim didn't protest to the assumption that he loved you too. The two of you had yet to exchange I love yous, which was understandable as he'd yet to fully apologize for his crimes against you. Though he'd taken steps towards forgiveness, ones that outweighed the phrase, I'm sorry. The act of saying the words, fessing up even when it was hard for him, would mean a lot. When you disappeared, after you stood up to the twink, when he made you eat your best friend, it set in for me. I realized that I had feelings for you. He put it bluntly, you being gone and being so worried, missing your presence a certain way. He clarified for your sake, though. Just made sense. I figured it out first. Toby quoted, moving his head up to your shoulder, resting his chin on you and leaning into your neck. I knew I liked you when you said to me in the alleyway, then try this on for size, rat boy. He horribly mimicked your voice. You remembered how terrified you were of him chasing you, throwing garbage at him and running for your fucking life. I was still pretty mad about the whole you stabbing me thing. His hug momentarily tightened in a soft threat, but I got over it pretty quick. He paused to roll his shoulders back. He nuzzled into your neck, liked how brave you were, but I knew that I was totally in love with you when you... He paused, humming as he mulled over his words. I don't know, actually. Just love you. Giggling, you let Toby rock the two of you back and forth while the others waited quietly with adoring gazes. Tim must have felt the need to step up and say something. Good Lord. As he repeated the words, you looked at him with raised eyebrows. I like you a lot, okay? His iris shot to the side for a second before he forced himself to look back at you. Some time now. I'm glad that you feel the same. He's so bad at this. Oh, I love him. Smiling, you pulled a hand off Toby's arm and put your hand atop his. I'm glad you do too. You stayed like that for some time, quietly tender. Quiet didn't last in this house, and for once it wasn't Toby who broke the silence. It was you, the spark of an idea quickly tumbling past your lips. I should take you guys out on dates sometime. A separate one for each of them, one to match their personal preferences. Romantic as shit. It'd feel normal. They could get a taste of what a less murder-oriented life with you could be. Maybe. Truthfully, it sounded like a wonderful idea. An idea that could reel them onto your side of things. That'd be nice. Fuck yeah. That sounds nice, I guess. I thought this was longer. I don't know why. Oh, it's because that's open. I thought that was going to be longer to read. Guess not. Alrighty, guys. That was chapters 45... That was chapters 46 and 47 of Spill Your Guts. In the next video, we will be reading chapters 30 and 30.5. Wait, what? Huh? Oh, never mind. So it's just, the original plan was to split chapter 48 in half because chapter 48 is like 58 pages long. But now that I know how I can split videos, they're put together. So, never mind. We're just going to be reading chapter 48 for the next part. So yeah. God, that was long. This is a 2-hour video, bro. That's crazy. For chapter 48, there's a smut one-shot for this. They made a one-shot for it on their profile. I'm not going to read it for y'all, but, it's there if you want to go read it yourself. Anyway, if you liked, subscribe maybe. I am your host, Phineas, and I will see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.